Yeah, it's good to go from my end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just waiting for. Yeah, there it is for Nico.
Right. Yeah. Just want to say, guys, this is why Bitcoin will probably never quit being so fun, right?
Right. Yeah.
Dude, like let's be realistic right now for a second. Like, apart from the whole Bitcoin intellectual cocktail that we've already established, like
Mhm.
I'm a dude from Venezuela in the middle of a pandemic that is now living in EU. Nico is from Venezuela, he lives in the US, but it's because of this collective cloud of knowledge that we've
That's
built over
right.
the internet, that we are connected and somehow feeling next to each other, right? Uh,
Right.
so it's that I've said this before on Kivon's show and other Bitcoin pods. Like, this is just like we can take it all the way up to $1 trillion asset class, saving $700 billion in remittances and whatever. But in the end, we're just doing something peaceful, right?
Right.
We are just sharing knowledge and love over the internet, man. And so
That's right.
that's why this is unstoppable, man. That's why
It's
this
That's right.
it's freedom,
Because
man. It's freedom.
despite
is free, man.
this, yeah, man, absolutely. Despite having a military industrial complex, which, as I said on Ben's show, is built for no other reason than to kill human beings who get in the way of that central bank and fiat system.
Yeah, dude.
Despite having that, this peaceful revolution will prevail. It's
Absolutely.
inevitable. Like the I'm going to show what a nerd I am. Like the Star Trek characters, the Borg say, resistance is futile. Uh, Bitcoin will prevail, and yeah, this peaceful revolution is not going to be derailed.
Totally. It's inevitable, and the idea is out of the bottle, and you can't put it back in, right? And you can't kill an idea. And what Bitcoin is, it's an idea, right? It's an idea of self custody. It's an idea of sovereignty, right? And exactly what the Lord was talking about earlier. Whether you realize it or not, you will benefit from the Bitcoin network versus using the legacy system, which is designed in such a way where it literally only benefits the people at the top. That's literally how it's designed. And you have Bitcoin just coming out of left field and completely disrupting that, and giving a chance, right? Because it's not skewing it to the little guy, okay? But what it's doing is it's creating an even playing field with the goddamn elites,
Exactly.
and which they've never given to anyone. You see this in the United States as well. This isn't only foreign countries. You see it with AMC, the
Right.
AMC stock. You see it with the GameStop stock. As soon as the little guys, as soon as the plebs, like we like to call ourselves, started winning, right? Guess what
Yeah.
happened? They just stopped the trading. With Bitcoin,
Yeah.
they can't do that. No matter who they talk to, and they're like the U.S. government, hey, do something about it. You can't. It's decentralized, right?
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, man. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And within a bigger picture or context, I've always been trying to resolve for myself the question: how can I mean, it's so monstrous, this, as you call it, military, industrial, intelligence, central banking complex. How can it be that such a structure, such a gigantic structure, but still so elitism, can be? How does it derive its legitimacy? lord. I mean, with all
Yeah,
this criminal immunity, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
yeah,
The dollar.
Yes.
yeah. So over centuries, they've centralized themselves using their ability to control the dollar 100%. And there are, without going into the usual conspiracy theories, there are groups of people whose interests, particularly financial interests, uh, are vested in this monetary system, and they're not too fussed about which political parties in office. They they will they will fund both sides uh, to ensure that their primacy and the primacy of the central banking system is kept safe. That's why the central banking system has always been a slight outlier. It's in inverted commas, it's of the state, but not quite of the state. It's not directly controlled by whichever political party is in office. It decides how much the dollar that you work 60 to 80 hours a week is worth. They decide how much your time is worth. They oscillate that price up and down arbitrarily at how much your time is worth. And the supply of this paper, which carries the value of your time, is determined arbitrarily. If when it suits, they'll print 1.9 trillion pieces of paper that are backed by no extra goods and services, no new product development that's going to benefit mankind. It's backed by thin air, and that thin air is distributed to a nation suffering under a pandemic that doesn't realize that this thin air from this central banking system is keeping them in servitude to this institution, when access to this decentralized monetary network that has no CEO, no board, is protected by a global network of, as Michael Saylor likes to say, hornets who guard it jealously and protect it with their lives, who are willing, as Jack Mallers said in his speeches, who are willing to die on that hill to protect this network, which gives other people freedom
Absolutely.
from that structure.
Absolutely, and I'll even add to that. Like it just look, the legacy system is a proof of stake system. Okay, that's the way that's the way
It's
it
the
is.
original proof of stake system.
It's the proof of stake system, and what I think that one of the best Satoshi's creation, one of the geniuses, right, is the total democratization of the money creation, meaning you could be the United States government, you could be someone, someone living in Venezuela, you could be someone living in Argentina. You still have to pay
100%.
the same amount of electricity as everybody else to get that one Bitcoin. And just that mere fact, just that technology in itself, what it does is it takes the human element out of the equation, because over time, even with the best intentions, right, a system gets corrupted, right? But when the monetary policy can't get corrupted by humans, no matter which party's in control, which ideology is popular at the time, right? You're taking the monetary policy out of the control of humans and you're giving it to math. Because I could tell you the monetary policy of Bitcoin for the next 147 years. I could tell it to you right now. I can't tell you the monetary policy of the Fed for the next 6 months. I have no idea. In fact, I would even add to that. They have no idea what they're doing at this point. They're just playing pretend so that the whole house of cards doesn't collapse on itself. Because this idea that they could raise rates if they wanted to, that's bullshit. This idea that I apologize for cursing. This idea that, that they could stop printing at the rate they're printing, that's BS as well. Right? So it's all facade. It's a facade, right? And again, like the main benefactors are these bureaucrats at the top, and of course the financial elites. And this money printer and this system of proof of stake is what has allowed for so many wars to happen where the majority of the population didn't even agree with it. But the fact that the government had access to this unlimited money printer allowed them to fund whatever failed policies that they could think of. So it's just total BS. BS.
Yeah. And it amplifies the impact that Bitcoin will have. And the beauty of the Bitcoin monetary policy is exactly as you said. Uh, Finally, the most what has always been the point of failure for monetary systems, which is human control. We've always been the point of failure. So you remove that point of failure, and it, math is completely neutral. It has no agenda. It just churns out an answer to a problem that is fed, and that's it. And to have a monetary system based on proof of work, when in practically the entire modern history of the developed world is based on the OG per proof of stake system. It's entirely a proof of stake system, and its inability to cater to the entirety of a population is shown over and over and over again. And the adage that you measure a society by how its ability and how it treats its weakest and its most disadvantaged. And it's not a good track record that this proof of stake system has with treating the weakest and least and most disadvantaged. And Bitcoin treats them with great respect and democratizes it so that they have exactly the same chance as someone whose old money lives in the Hamptons. Yeah, your Bitcoin is there will still only be 21 million Bitcoin to you as there are to me, and after the halving, the mining output is still going to be exactly the same as it is for you, as it is for me. And as you said, when you plug in and get that 110 volts, it costs the same as it does for you as it does for me. So, that's the beauty of one of the beauties of Bitcoin, and its ability, as I said earlier, without even getting into the asset, the most pristine asset and the most sound money that has ever been created, without even owning it, just being exposed to that network is life-changing. So, yeah, it's exciting times.
Lord Fujita, would you say time is of the essence? I mean, if you were to advise or give an advice to not only, the President Bukele of El Salvador, but other Latin American countries, do you think it doesn't matter anymore, the process of whatever you would call it, hyper-Bitcoinization, or do you think this is the time, the momentum we need to seize, or the people of all these different countries, small, mid-size, large size, and, do the same thing that El Salvador had just initiated? I mean, is time of the essence now, or?
Time of the essence, because we still live in a real world, and we still live in a world where the IMF and the World Bank are the dogs of war of this financial system. They're the front line that this centralized central bank fiat system sends out around the globe to do its bidding. And those who benefit from this central banking financial system, history has shown that they don't sit on their hands when they're threatened and when their primacy is threatened. So I think time is of the essence in order that we get as many of us um, on the other side of the ledger as possible. Uh, in there's strength in numbers, right? So in preparation for that onslaught, it's harder to in reinterpret, to illegally reinterpret the World Bank Charter against a dozen nations instead of one. So we all have World Bank loans, and we're all repaying World Bank loans, and it's harder for that absentee landlord to hold up his case against an entire building of tenants who are complaining, rather than just one apartment who's saying, "No, I'm not going to stand for this anymore." If the entire building is going, look, uh, either you change your payment system, or we're going to leave, or we're going to torch this building. Um, yeah, I think time is of the essence. And from the nation state side, I can guarantee you this is the first time you're going to see FOMOing by nation states.
Absolutely.
No one's going to want to be the last to take advantage of this. No head of government is going to want his population to go, everywhere else in the world, they've doubled their GDP. Why haven't we? You're getting voted out of office. So, yeah, no government in the developing world wants to be the last to get on this, this perfect technology.
So do you think we're going to experience an unexpected acceleration of this process, or do you think it's going to take?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think it may go in oscillations, like in waves, but I think we're at the beginning of the crest of this first wave, where there will be an acceleration, I think, of at least half a dozen Central and South American countries. The president of Tanzania last week informed the central bank to prepare to take on Bitcoin as legal tender. So the African continent, once the African continent is sparked, that will spread like wildfire. There's us in the Pacific. So it's not any one region. It is now a global movement. And as you said, and as these two astute gentlemen have alluded to earlier, those who most need it have been the ones who've had least access to it. And conversely, those nations who are most developed, it looks like they will be the stragglers at the end, the last ones to adopt it, because they've got vested interests in their country who will be fighting adoption.
Oh man, the epic battle for freedom on a global scale, absolutely glorious to watch. And but yeah, I agree with the Lord's points. I think that unfortunately, the IMF, the World Bank, all these financial elites, they own the mainstream media, right? So
That's right.
expect propaganda, expect the narrative. First it was used for they're gonna say terrorism, they're gonna say every single thing that you can imagine,
Yeah.
to kind of scare their citizens. And unfortunately, a lot of their citizens, especially in the Western countries, not so much in 60% of the world, but in the 40% privileged part of the world, unfortunately, a large part of that population is going to pick the convenience of central bank digital currencies. They're going to do it because they're going to be easier. And that's going to be really interesting, because I know that in 60% of the world that's excluded from the legacy system, I think they're gonna pick Bitcoin. They're not gonna want a central bank digital currency,
exactly.
man.
Yeah, dude.
So yeah, man. So it's exactly what we've been saying. It's cosmic justice. These countries that have been, and I didn't know it was as bad as you say. Okay, we've been reporting, and I've been doing research on the World Bank, but man, it just proves what our thoughts were. These people are enslaving countries with these
Yeah,
predatory loans, right? They give them to you, and then you're in servitude, right? And then
yeah,
Bitcoin is a way out of that. Like, it's literally a way out
100%.
of that. In fact, you could use the loan that they give you to buy Bitcoin,
To buy
literally
Bitcoin,
defeating
exactly.
them in the process. It's like you're using their garbage money to destroy them in the process. But it's
Exactly.
oh my god, it's gonna be great. And I agree with you. I think this is gonna happen very quickly. I would say over
Yeah,
because the FOMO is gonna be real. Once they start seeing
yeah,
El Salvador
It's the
doing
calm
really
before the
well,
storm. You can feel it.
exactly. Yeah, you could
yeah.
feel it.
If you
You
if
could
you
feel it.
think individuals can FOMO, wait till we see a whole nation state FOMO.
Yeah.
It's going to be major FOMO.
It's gonna be great. Can't wait.
Yeah, exactly, man. And um, yeah, it's the fact that it's spread throughout the planet. I think is testament to the fact that the way the World Bank and the IMF have been. And at the beginning, we'd think, well, maybe this is just the natural sort of development of having these types of loans. It's the natural way that things turn out, is that you'll end up in a debt cycle until with modern technology, Freedom of Information Acts, and social media, who digs out these things, we find out that since the 80s, it has been policy. It's documented policy that they deliberately go out to ensnare developing nations in a debt cycle. That was directed from management. That's company policy, and that's when you see how sinister it's been, and why this is such karmic justice that this is occurring.
Yeah, I mean, as Eric Varskouil, often said, I think the honeymoon phase is over. I think we can agree on that. Bitcoin's honeymoon phase is over. Now it's getting really exciting. And um, Lord, before I forget, you posted something on Twitter. No, I'm sorry, not on Twitter, on Instagram. And
Mhm.
out of necessity, I think people are going to become creative. And Tonga might not have volcanoes, but they do have oceanic waves. And you described how this could work, a potential response to Bitcoin mining energy FUD, using the kinetic energy of the waves around Neo Fou, I think pronounce it correctly, to generate electricity. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So once my plan had become public, of my hope to propel our nation into Bitcoin adoption and thereby free our population of, firstly, the remittance fees industry and the high level of fees that they impose on us, and then expose our country to the asset. Uh, I had not. That was the extent of my plan. I've also intend to push for our National Reserve Bank, who is our central bank. They sit on 700 million USD in foreign reserves, and as anyone who has anything to do with a developing nation knows, that's how developing nations measure their economic development, is how much do you have in foreign currency reserves, because that reflects how much you have in exports, and you're hoping that your exports are close to, if not more than your imports. It never is in a developing country, but you're hoping for a trade surplus rather than a trade deficit, which only occurs because developing nation central bankers tend to be London School of Economics, Keynesian economists, and that's what they push for, but that is never going to happen. So with that 700 million, they are faced essentially with the decision Michael Saylor was faced with. Do they hold it in USD? That's melting at 5% per annum. Do they buy bonds, which are negative yielding at minus 2% per annum? Do they put it in gold that's inflating at 2 to 4% per annum, or do they take the very objective, dispassionate, and logical step and invest it in an asset that appreciates at a rate of 200% per annum, as it has over the past 12 years? So that was the final step. And I had not contemplated anything further. But upon that becoming public, I suddenly became approached by a number of energy and energy mining firms about doing mining in Tonga. If Tonga was going to be a Bitcoin country, their advice was that it only made sense, as in El Salvador, to make it a mining country also. So Niua for All is the island that my estate is. So that land has been in my family. The person who has held the title I hold now. I'm the 20th Lord Fustua. Those previously held it by me go back 1,300 years, and this land's been in my family for 1,300 years. So
Wow.
it is the only populated volcano in our country. We have 21 volcanoes, 20 of which are unpopulated, many of them about the size of a football field. Ours is an actual island, and I've been approached by geothermal energy firms about extracting geothermal energy and to do Bitcoin mining. I had not known that a dormant volcano could produce geothermal energy, but apparently, according to them, it does. So I'm very thankful and appreciative of these approaches. It's very generous of them, especially the ones who offered their technology for free just because they want to see a little 100,000 population country become a Bitcoin country, and they want to see a little Bitcoin country succeed. So I've been overwhelmed by the generosity of these offers. Some of them are newer companies and are still building, so they're offering their technology for free because we'll be a pilot model for them that they can show other countries, and thereby we're an advertisement for them. But both offers are equally generous. And the other form of technology is the wave harnessing technology. So the base unit is underwater, and then the floating unit is just above it, and the spar, which connects it to a heavy plate, is underwater. And this unit has a magnetic coil in it, and the kinetic energy produced by the movement of very strong, very choppy seas generates a magnetic field around that coil. And when you break that magnetic field, an alternating current is produced. So within the floater, which houses the coil, that kinetic energy will create the magnetic field around the coil, and then the equipment severs the magnetic coil and shoots an alternating current into an amplifier transformer, which captures it, amplifies the voltage, and sends it down to a base unit, which shoots it to shore via cables which are designed to minimize the loss of voltage. And it hits a transformer on shore, a step-down transformer, which brings it down to 110 or 240 volts, depending on what kind of machinery you're using from which part of the world. And that powers the mining. So just the movement of our seas, and my island is just above the Tonga Trench. So we are on the tectonic plate that is right at the precipice Oh, there we are. That's the floater unit connected to the spar, and which is connected to the heavy plate at the bottom. And the movement of the sea will move that floater. As the sea gets stronger, that floater moves horizontally upwards, and the magnetic coil gets charged by the waves. And as it goes up, the magnetic field is broken, and the charge is the alternating current is produced. So it'll go back to shore. It gets stepped down to 110 or 240 volts. If you click on the next image, should show the actual production unit. Yeah, so that's the actual production unit. So
Wow.
in a country that's relied on very expensive diesel oil as the power for our very old generators, this is a life-changing technology.
How many megawatts does that generate? Just out of curiosity.
My understanding is that a array of 6 of those, I think they come in arrays of 6 or 12. If you see the first picture, the underwater part is the base station, and those cables, one set of cables goes to shore, one set of cables goes to another unit. So an array of 6, I have to double check that for you. I'm told an array of 6 or an array of 12. I can't exactly pin which right now, will produce 1 megawatt, which is enough. Is enough for our entire country, to be honest, but will be more than enough for the mining operation and to power our entire island.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's really really cool.
Bitcoin mining to the last mile, man.
Exactly, man. Someone tweeted in the thread with that photo. It says, Bukele, I'll see your volcanic geothermal mine, and I'll raise you the motion of the ocean. So, which was kind of funny. But for a country, especially my island does not have full-scale municipal electricity across the whole island. So,
So you're dependent on diesel, Lord?
Yes, diesel.
Okay.
Diesel. Our Jurassic generators, which all our country could afford, are diesel-powered generators, and diesel fuel is fairly expensive, which has to be shipped to us. So we pay the BP and Shell hit us with the cost of that transport, and then they park offshore and feed that down a pipeline to storage units on our main island, and then those stores divvied out into smaller vessels, ferries, who then take them to the outer islands.
That's
So
fantastic.
it's a very inefficient and expensive and anachronistic system that really serves no one except the provider of the diesel fuel and the generator of the electricity, of course, offloads that cost on the consumer.
So I assume more countries is going to follow. I mean, any country or island who is, which is located in, surrounded by oceanic waves and
Exactly.
can harness that power.
And there's a unit that they're modifying to be able to be used in countries just that have rivers. Just the movement of the river downstream can be harnessed by the unit, and turned into electricity. So, yeah, it's a life-changing technology for people, and for archipelago countries like ours, which are a lot of small islands distributed over a large patch of ocean. The ocean is our largest resource. It makes up 3/4 of our EEZ, our exclusive economic zone. That's the line drawn around our country, and constitutes our economic borders. What's inside there are 153 pretty small islands, with 700,000 square kilometres of waves. So those waves could be put to use.
This is mind-boggling. Wow. I mean, this makes me even more excited and bullish, Lord. So
Exactly, man. Same here. Same here.
yeah. I mean, before we wrap up, guys, what do you think gonna happen in the which countries do you think gonna go into the footsteps of El Salvador, go full blown whatever legal tender hyper Bitcoinization and replicate the same thing?
I heard it
Uh,
from.
sorry, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so I heard from a very reliable source, Paraguay and Panama right now.
Yeah,
That's what it's looking like.
that's my first too as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I can add to that is, I agree with the Lord in the sense that it will happen much faster than what much of us expected. I myself included in that, because having stayed in Venezuela during the period in 2017 when hyperinflation broke up in the country, 2019, the electric grid failed, et cetera, yada, yada. I was one of those few patriots from my country that decided to stay within the country to see how things would have evolved, right? Just to grasp a little bit better my whole reality and my personal story, right? But I bring this to the table because, I mean, the Venezuelan regime was sanctioned in 2017 by the US. And so the state oil company as well, right? And so effectively, they were unable, right, to pay back for the debt of the country because no bank wants to work with you because the IMF and the World Bank and the US are behind you. Um,
Yeah.
so you don't have you don't have ways of payments. You can actually store money. You can make international payments. So you'd have to revert somehow to another method of payment. And so the Venezuelan government had already been exploring with Bitcoin mining I can say this firsthand,
Wow.
since 2013, man, because at first it was this thing that they just wanted to know about that was happening within the country, right? Like, what are these bunch of geeks doing? What is this increase in electrical bills in this few zones and etc. But eventually
Right.
it became part of the solution for them to start transacting money in and outside of the country, right, without using the traditional banking and financial sector. Well, still using it, but using intermediaries in the middle between the traditional banking system and cryptocurrencies. So the thing is that since 2017, they've been trying to build up cryptocurrency regulations in Venezuela, but every single one of those efforts has been tied up to this El Petro national cryptocurrency. And what has been the end result of that after 4 years? Nothing, man. There's nothing. It's just air. So it's sad to say that Venezuela will actually be, I believe, one of the last countries in Latin America to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. But just because it is completely opposed, it is a completely opposed philosophy from the philosophy that the Venezuelan regime has. But this is like governments adopting Bitcoin at legal tender equals open politics, right?
Dude.
I believe that for the first time, or at least in a long time in human history, An entrepreneur from Minnesota that is right now living in the EU is being able to connect to a Bitcoin show host that lives right next to me and a politician that is open-minded from the other side of the world. And I would have loved that thing to have happened within my country for the past 28
Right.
years of my life. But because of stupidity and the crave for power that we humans can sometimes have,
Yeah.
you just end up destroying everything that you come by in the middle
Man,
as you just walk,
man,
right?
socialism and communism has destroyed countries for over 100 years now, and Venezuela was one of them.
Yeah,
So
man. So this is the thing. Like, yeah, I guess that I agree that the Panama, because I do have sources in Panama as well. Uh, Panama will be one of those first countries. Paraguay potentially as well. There's miners from Brazil that when they want to mine, they're unable to mine in Brazil because the electric costs are so high that they just go to Paraguay. So there has already been a tendency for Bitcoin mining in Paraguay as well. Uh, in the end, man, look, 1,000 small countries will be more, 50 and 100 more small countries will be more relevant and unstoppable than one big
Yeah.
nation that says no to this thing, man. And so if like by that time, even if they say no, they would have already been left apart, right? Like everybody would
Yeah.
have already been Bitcoinized, and they would be like, dude, we want to join this party, but we need Bitcoin to join this party. What the fuck are we gonna do? Are we gonna buy the ticket or not,
Exactly.
man? Because I'm getting tired of this stuff.
Yeah. You're stuck outside and the bouncer won't let you in past the velvet rope.
Right?
exactly.
Well, Nico, yeah, what do you
Yes.
think is coming
Man,
up?
look, there's gonna be there's a great awakening, but I am, and look, I make daily Bitcoin content, and the writing's on the wall. There's gonna be a clash. It's gonna be rough. There's gonna be casualties, but as long as you hold, everything's gonna be fine. But these people are not gonna go gently into that good night. Okay, and right now, Bitcoin sitting, at less than $1 trillion market cap, they could ignore it, right? But when Bitcoin starts getting close to 10 trillion, the market cap of gold, and then when it starts surpassing that, when it starts actually becoming an actual threat,
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm scared because like we are ready, but I am. And look, I've spoken to other content creators as well about this subject. I've spoken to Odell. I've spoken to Ben from BTC Sessions, and man, it's coming. It's coming. You've seen. Look, I'll put it to you this way, okay? This isn't very conspiracy theory or anything. Look at how much they've censored anything that goes against the COVID narrative.
Yeah.
Right?
Anything.
Look at how much they've gone after that. Now imagine
Yeah.
when there's a system of money outside of the control that starts actually being a threat to their power.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to tell you? Like,
Yeah.
that's what we're going to be up against. Bitcoin will win. The internet has always won. But what I'm worried about, right, is what casualties, how many people are going to sell because they get scared because, a central bank
Yeah,
releases a statement, right?
yeah, man.
So,
Because you can only hodl through knowledge.
yeah. So
Right.
so I'm excited because freedom is coming. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And after this conversation with the Lord, oh my God, I'm like, it's confirming everything that I've heard from other countries as well. Right? So it makes me incredibly bullish, incredibly hopeful for the future. That's what Bitcoin does, right? But at the same time, we have this final boss, okay? And man, you have no idea. This thing is it's gonna be a hammer. It's gonna just come savagely, and they're just gonna label. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing things like, if you own Bitcoin, you're an enemy of the state. like along those lines, right? And I'm not talking about like China, and I'm not talking about countries that are not democracies. I'm talking about in democratic countries,
Yeah.
right, that have benefited the most from the legacy system. The rhetoric coming out of the mainstream media is going to be surreal, in my opinion.
And look at the
Let's see what
ECB. I
happens.
mean, it's the same words, they're using. That's why they're pushing so vehemently, for these CBDCs,
They're going to push the climate narrative. That's what they're going to use to try to control Bitcoin. The ESG narrative. It just consumes too much energy. You see that they already tapped Elon on the shoulder. Okay, it's not normal that one of the smartest guys in the world goes from, yeah, Bitcoin's awesome, and then he does a 180. He got tapped. Okay, that's essentially what happened. He got tapped by some very powerful people. Okay, and they're going to go after Bitcoin because of the energy consumption. Okay, because that's what they use to control. I think I lost video, but I still have audio.
Yeah,
but
we hear you.
that's what they use to control. But essentially, what they're going to do is that they're going to try to push a proof of stake coin. So like an Ethereum or whatever, because they can coerce that coin. They can coerce a proof of stake system, but they cannot coerce Bitcoin. They cannot coerce a proof of work system.
Yeah,
right?
that's a sly roundabout way which Austrian economist Hayek, I mean, bless him, which he could have, maybe he couldn't even imagine, that we could ever have like an open monetary network is totally decentralized and censorship resistant. I mean, it's over. The game is over. Pandora's box open, 12 or 13 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, I had thought, to be honest, before El Salvador, most of us had thought Venezuela would be the first country to adopt, because their level of usage is higher, had been higher of the base layer than anyone else. Yeah.
Look, what I can say, and I can disclose this because I no longer live in the country. I'm finally safe. I'm finally able to like walk to the supermarket like a normal person, right? Like I tried talking to the regulators in Venezuela for so long, man, right? And it's just, like every time I was like, dude, just legalize Bitcoin. We don't need anything else, like just Bitcoin. They would say like, oh no, but that will be anarchism. And inside of me, I will be like, how the fuck does a communist come and tell you? but right, but that's the thing. I tried pushing so hard for building our own infrastructure of Bitcoin full nodes. Randy Brito tried pushing so hard for building our own offline censorship-resistant network to like a censorship-resistant money transmission layer within the country that could work as an on-ramp and as an off-ramp, etc. But what can I say, man? History is actually going to force them again, and they would have been early adopters. They ended up not being just because of crave for power, and eventually this fight for freedom will kneel them down, man.
Of course.
I agree that eventually Venezuela will declare Bitcoin as legal tender because the nation currently needs it, man. I mean, they're unable to move the money. And it's the country with the biggest oil reserves in the world. So there is money. There's still like money in Venezuela, but they just can't materialize it into another form of payment, right? So if Brazil gets on board with this, if Paraguay gets on board, if El Salvador gets on board, if Panama, which is one of the main banking systems that the Venezuela government used to use at its time to funnel money internationally, accepts Bitcoin as legal tender, then Venezuela will say, okay, you know what? We have been on this fight alone against the IMF and the World Bank, and all of the sudden, we have all of these dudes that are not part of our team, but that if we join the Bitcoin team, then maybe we have other pawns to fight next to.
Yeah, that's a game theory in full force. That's the game theory, I think.
That's
Yeah.
it, man. So
And to be honest,
anyway,
yeah,
however it plays out, either sooner or later, Venezuela will be on board for Bitcoin legal tender, man. I'm so sure.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just hoping it's gonna happen, not necessarily synchronicity, like simultaneously. That's impossible. It's it's just impossible. But I'm hoping for shortest intervals, time intervals, for the execution. And because that's why I asked, Lord, what do you think, is time of the essence? And I think this is the momentum we have to seize right now.
Yeah, guys, I guess I'm sorry. Yeah, I get just one quick note here. I just guess that we've been through the technophile bubble side of Bitcoin, the retail bubble side of Bitcoin. Now we're still at mid cycles in the institutional wave on Bitcoin. And so I guess that we can expect, it wouldn't be like too crazy to expect it right now, for the next halving, like a government fueled bubble in Bitcoin, right? Like debt markets and traditional monetary markets diving into Bitcoin, like not only savings and cash, getting cash savings from treasury accounts of companies, but foreign reserves, man, and debt converting into Bitcoin. And it's just this slow but constant process of Bitcoin connecting and intertwining all of different forms of money and markets that exist, right? So
yeah. I think, excuse me, my understanding is Paraguay, Panama as well. I've gotten reliable reports that Colombia is not going to be too far behind. I think, as you said, I think Brazil with El Salvador, and also I think, exactly, you'll know better, but it would seem Venezuela would have no logical reason to hold out anymore. With all the surrounding countries, Panama's the banking system it's previously used. It trades with all these surrounding countries. It would seem that it would make Venezuela will eventually capitulate. So, extremely bullish on Central and South America, and the courageousness of President Bukele, and hopefully even more leaders. In Africa, Nigeria was similar to Venezuela in its journey with Bitcoin, being slightly ahead of the rest of the pack, and hopefully now in the Pacific, the premier economic think tank in New Zealand, called the Lobby, wrote to their Prime Minister a week ago, urging her for the government to accept Bitcoin as foreign currency. So that's a very clever sort of backdoor way into getting adoption as legal tender, because if it's classified as foreign currency, then immediately it's declassified as an asset, and you no longer have to pay capital gains tax on it. So New Zealand could be headed that way. Not could be. New Zealand is Bitcoin friendly. Its national pension fund, run by the government, last year bought 5% exposure to Bitcoin. So there's definitely moves in New Zealand, and hopefully now us in the South Pacific, I'll be pushing for it. There's, as I said, the plan is exposure to the Bitcoin network, which requires no legislative change or any amendment in how the Reserve Bank treats it. It's merely adding one app to every user's phone and adding one app to the point of sale, and that automatically exposes us. Then I've been fortunate enough to have given me the bill early so that I could begin working on our version of it. Our version of it requires what's called a gap analysis, which the Attorney General's office would usually do and take 3 months. I finished half of it last week, and hopefully we'll have the other half finished this week, where we check the bill against all our constitution and our existing legislation to ensure there are no contradictions. And then in a House of 26 members, 14 is a majority. The Lords make up 9 votes, and we always vote in a block. We never break ranks. So where one goes, we all go. So my guys, my other 8 guys will go with me. That's 9. I have 3 good colleagues. Not good, not that anyone's bad, but closer colleagues in the people's representatives who, through their own journeys with technology, have been exposed to Bitcoin and will be friendly to a proposed bill. And that makes 12 and only leaves 2 extra votes to get 14. The mechanics of that requires going through a legislation committee and a whole House committee before it being tabled as a bill. Any pushback by my good friend, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, who I've spent many a night over a Macallan 25 bottle of single malt discussing the future of the country's economy. He's a London School of Economics Keynesian economist. Once I explained to him how exposure to the technology will increase our GDP by 30% by putting 30% extra in people's pockets, meaning they'll spend 30% extra of capital injected into the economy. He'll see that politically, if I go on the front page of the newspaper and say, I want you to receive $30 instead of $70 a week, and this guy is telling me that you can't, then he will fall into line most definitely, which only leaves His Majesty the King, whose signature is required for a bill to be brought into law. And that will require me to do what I've done since the inception of my political career, which is to seek an audience with His Majesty and brief him completely on the pros and cons of every issue and put him in the most informed position to make a decision. So those are the mechanics and logistics of getting us off the ground in Tonga. The mining will be dependent on me getting my head around the technology that these very generous companies have offered as soon as possible and making a decision. So, that's kind of our inside of the world, what's kind of going on. I don't know what may be of interest to you guys, maybe not, but I'll tell you anyway. A country called Tuvalu, who's about 2 countries down from ours, 2 islands down from ours.
It's one of the smallest countries in the world, if I'm not
one
mistaken.
of the smallest. Our country could fit in the Astrodome. Their country could fit probably in, Candlestick Park. They're going completely paperless. They're adopting a public ledger where they'll put their entire judiciary, executive and legislature on a public ledger with using blockchain, obviously, to be as transparent as possible. And they are going to adopt the head of the project's a guy named George Siosi, and I'm still trying to convince him to adopt Bitcoin. Unfortunately, they're going down the BSV route. But Yeah, I'm still working on it.
You gotta save them. You gotta save them.
I've got to save the whole country from that.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, dude.
God.
Yeah.
Lord,
That's terrible.
I'm sorry, Nico.
No, no,
Uh,
no. No, go ahead.
Lord, I have a quick question for you. So,
Absolutely, brother. Go ahead.
are you guys able to like draft a law to make Bitcoin legal tender in Tonga? Is it like a similar process to the one that you just explained, or yeah, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, as I said, I was very fortunate to get a copy early from the El Salvadorian team, their bill, and that bill is quite a blueprint. So, what I've been doing, usually new legislation in Tonga, you send it to the Attorney General's office, and they spend 3 months going through all Tonga's existing legislation, especially the Constitution, to make sure the new bill doesn't contradict any of it. So, what usually would take 3 months, I've done a week and finished half of it. I'll finish the other half this week and have a bill that's ready to present to Parliament right now. The problem is our borders in Tonga have been locked, uh, hard lockdown since March 2020. Um, our Prime Minister had set to open them in September until Fiji, who's right next to us, and Papua New Guinea, who are next to us, began getting 100 new cases of COVID each week. And it sort of scared our Minister of Health and our cabinet. Uh, our health system will not handle a COVID outbreak, even a mild one. And our country and Samoa are the two most obese nations on the planet, according to the WHO. Our major killer are NCDs, non-communicable diseases, which means we have a high rate of cardiovascular disease, lung disease, diabetes, lifestyle diseases, and these are all the major risk factors for COVID. So no Prime Minister wants to be the one on watch that lets the country be wiped out when COVID comes in. So he's hard locked it. And that's why we're still on the list. There's us, Palau, Tuvalu, North Korea, and Turkmenistan are the only 6 countries that are still zero COVID since the beginning of the pandemic. And that's because of the hard lock border. And people are complaining, they're writing in the newspapers because not only do we have a hard lock border, but we now have a curfew. At 11 p.m. every night, the army will come out onto the streets and make sure everyone goes home. And there's a curfew from 11 p.m. till sun. And there's a curfew from 11 p.m. till sunrise. So people are writing in saying, why do we have a curfew if our borders are already locked? But our Prime Minister is also an evangelical pastor, and his position is nothing good happens between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, so you should all stay at home. Hopefully I'll be able to get in earlier because I'd really like to present the bill in this year's sitting of Parliament. The only flights in and out have been when COVID hit. Australian, New Zealand's orchards, fruit orchards, Australians and New Zealanders, just like in the US, will not pick fruit. So it's usually unskilled labour from overseas. And traditionally, it's backpackers from Europe come through and they pick the fruit and they go on their holiday. But through COVID, no backpackers. So Australia and New Zealand did a deal with Tonga, Samoa and Vanuatu in the Pacific to fly thousands of Pacific Islanders over to pick the fruit and then get repatriated. They go in 3-month slots. So every 3 months, there's a repatriation flight from Australia and New Zealand taking our fruit pickers back. So that's the only likely way in. or has been for most people for the past year, is to hop one of those flights. You have to get permission from the Minister of Health. Every single person who is on a flight must get individual sign off from our Minister of Health. So it's a little bit convoluted, but it's not impossible. So as I've discussed, all those things I can do remotely. My discussions with the Prime Minister and the rest of the Cabinet, with my fellow Lords in Parliament, all that can be done remotely from here in New Zealand. But presenting the bill has to be in person, and you don't brief His Majesty over a Zoom call. That has to be done in person also.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I'm very convinced, Lord. First of all, I want to wish you the best after your post surgery. I hope you're going to
Thank you, brother.
heal
Appreciate
yourself.
that.
I think the
Thank you.
intention is very important here, and I'm convinced you will do whatever it takes to make the decision makers and His Majesty comprehend what's here really at stake.
Exactly. It's the freedom and livelihood of our people, particularly our people who need it most, that is at stake. And I think when they see that, there is no person with a conscience that could possibly deny that to a population.
Exactly.
That's my view anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. It was really, I had a blast. I'm going to edit it. Sorry for the glitch. I even changed my location to have super bandwidth, but all of a sudden I had lost connection. I don't know.
No problem. I thank you. I'm extremely privileged to be here with these two extremely well informed and generous gentlemen. And with yourself, I appreciate the invitation. It's a great honor to be here, and I thank you for including me. And I hope this is the first of many chats.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to repeat this. So, Lord, thank you so much, Alessandro, Nico. Hope we'll have a great day. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you, Kevin.